obviously, it's been over a year now since we've introduced white, but it's still important to drive home what white is. And white, essentially, the best way to put white is it's a visual performance. It's a visual performance aid that we learned in the Ghost putter. We saw the success there, and it's coupled with the black face. So it's true a story about non-glare in that there's no sunspots, so it's a very clean look. But with the black face, it actually has alignment principles to it as well. So we still have to drive home that white is actually a selling feature of the R11s and the Rocket Balls driver. So with that video, it really is important that with the R11s, it's way more than just an S at the end. A lot of people are quick to think that we just released another product and put an S at the end of it. And really the most important thing in the selling feature of this is the only thing that has stayed the same from last year's R11 is that it's white. It's been completely overhauled. And a lot of people are kind of taken aback when you say that statement, and you actually get their attention fairly quick when you say, the only thing that's the same is that it's white. And so it really has been completely overhauled. I'm going to tell you about some of the different ways that we've done that. So, as we look at the club itself, we've gone to basically introducing some characteristics that were previously seen in the burner line. So burner was all about speed. So with R11, we wanted to introduce that speed characteristic, and that's where we put the S. And so with that comes a much more aerodynamic crown and skirt and sole than we've ever done before. So much so that we even looked at the weight ports. The slots in the weight ports, if you actually look closely, they're actually vented. Before, the function of the weight port was simply, can we get a wrench in there and can we move the weights? But now, we're looking at every single characteristic of the driver. So even the weight ports have been vented to help speed up the club head. Going back to the club head itself, it's larger. So we've gone from a 440 to a 460. So the larger head brings in two things into play. Faster ball speed and a higher MOI. So it's more forgiving and it's overall faster ball speed, so there's more distance potential with that. And then obviously the big story with R11 and the R11s was adjustability. So what we've done is we've expanded that even further. So last year we had a 1 degree sleeve on the R11, but on tour it was a 1.5 degree sleeve. So on tour we actually had even more adjustability. With R11s, we're bringing that tour sleeve into the retail market. So now we have more adjustability with loft. We have a 1.5 degree change. So we can make that 10 a 12, and we can make that, we can make the 9 a 10.5, and we can make that 9 a 7.5. So we can dial it up or dial it down a lot more than what we had previously with the R11. With that adjustability and expanding that adjustability, we have the ASP. So last year we had 3 positions. This year we have 5 positions. So with ASP, we now have a neutral setting, a 1.7, or I'm sorry, a 1.5 degree change and a 3-degree change. So the best way to think about that is, last year with the R11 driver, when you took the loft up a degree or down a degree, the face angle changed by 2 degrees each way. So as you raised loft, the face angle closed 2 degrees. The ASP had a 2-degree change as well, so you can bring that back to square. So now with this new sleeve at 1.5 degree change, we would actually have a 3-degree change in face angle. So ASP had to come along with the FCT. So as FCT was expanded, ASP was needed to be expanded as well. So now we have a 3-degree change to offset the adjustability of FCT. So with this, we now have a better shaft. So last year was the Fujikara Blur 60 and the Blur 65 TP. And that was a hit or miss kind of shaft. There were kind of mixed reviews on the Blur. So with R11s, we really wanted to go to a different manufacturer, so we went with Autola. And their RIP series has now been in the line for about 3 years, been very successful, and they were getting ready to launch a new RIP shaft themselves called the Phenom. So we got on board, and now with the R11s comes stock with the RIP Phenom. Now, it's built off their Alpha platform, and the Alpha had a very, very stable tip and had a lot of good feel. However, they wanted to increase stability of the shaft overall. So shaft manufacturers to increase stability in the shaft typically have to do what? They have to add weight, okay? But they don't want to do that because that slows down the performance of the shaft. So they needed to look at a material and the geometry on which that material is woven onto the shaft without having to add weight. So they actually looked at the butt section of the Phenom, and as they designed the Phenom, they needed to actually stabilize this butt section. The tip was fine, but to overall stabilize the shaft, the butt end needed to be addressed. So now the material that's woven on to the Phenom is in a much tighter weave, and this is essentially the loading zone of the shaft, right underneath the grip. So we have a better shaft as well, coupled with the R11s head. Now, when we look at the tuning, it's still a 1, 2, 3. It's the 3 dimensions of tuning. So the fitting process is the same. You're going to fit for loft, and then you're going to address face angle, and then you would adjust the fine tuning of the flight with the movable weights. The weights are still a 10 and a 1. However, the weights themselves are set into the head and positioned a little bit more forward. So obviously you guys know that when you put the weight in the heel, it helps close up the face. But when you actually can bring the weight a little bit more forward, there's less basically movement that the shaft needs to have that face come into play at impact. So what we've done is we've actually, with the weights, moved the center of gravity slightly forward. When you have the CG moved forward, you have a faster overall ball speed. And so that's what we've done. We've also built in the aerodynamics along with moving the center of gravity more forward. Any questions so far?
We hear so much about CG being moved back.
Right, exactly. So a lot of you always would hear the CG's low and deep, and that's all you would hear about. However, when it's low and deep, you actually slow down the ball speed of the club, at least the potential of it. So what we wanted to do is actually move it closer to the face, so therefore there's no lagging behind, because if the back end is heavy, it's going to take that much more force to get this head to really bring up the speed and to deliver all the impact that you can. So a lot of people would say, well, if you're moving the center of gravity forward, then are you giving up some stability? Because now it can't be as forgiving because the center of gravity isn't as far back. So what happens is when you move that CG forward, the face essentially becomes hotter. And so when the face is faster, the sweet spot zone increases. So we make up the forgiveness in being that the face is now more basically livelier. So it's more responsive face because of that CG being closer. So we're not sacrificing anything in forgiveness. And also, since we've gone from a 440 to a 460, it's built in more stability anyways. That's one of the reasons why we can afford to go slightly forward with the CG, is because overall the head is more stable just because it's larger. So that's a little bit different for what consumers are used to hearing, is that we're actually promoting a forward CG, because everyone's used to low and deep CG. But it's important for them to understand that if they really want the most distance potential, we need to move that CG forward to allow this club to have the most active face possible.
So if you move the CG more forward in this driver,
Yes.
is it lower level than the last R11?
Yes, that's one of the things. We're looking right around 700 to 750 RPMs less spin. And that's attributed to the weight being placed more forward. And also it's larger size. We have a little bit more depth in the face, just slightly. But overall the spin has been toned down just a touch. Because that was one of the concerns that we had was we're going to 460. We don't want anything to go too high and spin too much, because obviously we have a lot of issues with that. And then that's why, again, we went to the 1.5 degree sleeve, because if we are having a player experience higher spin, higher launch, we have more control now to adjust for that. All right, so we're going to go on to the next slides here. As you can see, we have a lot more adjustability. This club can now go anywhere from 6 closed to 6 open if you want. So if you push the FCT, if you push the sleeve to the extreme setting, and you push ASP to the extreme setting, you can get that 6 closed to 6 open.
You mean 6-degree difference?
Correct, the total
Yeah.
range.
Yeah.
6 open to
This
6
is the
closed,
new
so 12
R11s
degrees.
drive. We've done a couple things to try and improve the speed of the club head.
12
We
degrees.
changed the pocket on the sole, so we're going to get a faster head speed here. We moved the weights a little bit forward, and we've actually streamlined the shape of them as well. So that's going to give us a little bit more speed, maybe about 100 or 200 RPMs lower spin, which should give you more distance. We've changed the flight control sleeve. Instead of 1 degree, it's now 1.5 degrees, so that gives us some more range as well. We've gone to a 5-position ASP to dial you in even more. When you have a 5-position sole plate with the 1.5 degree sleeve, you match up wherever you want to get the exact loft and facing.
Alright, I'm gonna set it a little bit closed on the face angle. So I'll go C. Alright.
That looks a little high, you think?
Yeah,
Yeah,
a little bit high.
Yeah. That's the standard setting. I know you're typically a little
Yeah.
slower than that. You want to go 1 notch slower or 2?
1 is enough.
That'll be 3/4.
Yeah.
What do you think your number was this year in driving distance, yardage? You're going to be right around 300, right?
I'm usually around the 295, something like that.
Okay, ball speed jumped up a little bit, Serge. It went to 172. You're getting about 309 on that one. How do you like the feel of the head itself?
It's probably a little bit too heel weighted, yeah.
Okay, let's change that. Well, let's go 10 and 6. How's that?
Yeah. That was better. That definitely felt better.
Yeah, again, really good numbers there, Serge. 173. That went to 312.
That was nice.
173 ball speed. So it was up on average, probably 3 miles an hour versus your current one. Total distance, you average is about 309.
It's good.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, 10 yards is 10 yards. That's going to be fun to play with next year.
It definitely will be.
So that's what's important to drive home to the consumer, is that you can take the same driver and just with tuning it, you can gain yardage. So it's not that we're switching out a different shaft or that we're putting really any kind of different weights. It's just that 3D tuning. So a lot of people may be a little intimidated with all the different settings, because now R11s is even more tunable, but it still comes back to that 3 dimensions, that 1, 2, 3. It's loft, it's face angle, and then it's the movable weight. The other feature, as you can see here, is the thick, thin crown. That's noted right there. Basically, what we wanted to do as we went to 460, we needed to strengthen the crown. So what we've done now is we have a multi-thickness crown, which allows that crown to be stretched as much as it is, but still very stable. Because there's something called crown flexing, where if the crown gets a little too weak or too elongated, the actual impact of the golf ball can actually flex out the crown, and there's energy loss in the head. So this thick, thin crown basically acts like a structure, and it makes it more rigid. So that's one of the benefits that we have as well that previously the R11 did not have. So when we get into the fairway wood, so the larger head brought in an acoustic value that was somewhat missing with the original R11. So yes, the acoustics naturally were raised just slightly because of its larger head, so that's the other benefit to it. It has a more lively sound to it as well.
Slower spin.